We are going to study now the place of international supply of services. So, in the context of UAE, quite a few aspects are relevant here. Where the place of supply of services is in the UAE, that supply is subject to UAE VAT laws and regulation. But if a supply takes place outside the UAE, the supply is treated as out of the scope of UAE VAT, and therefore UAE VAT is not applicable. So what is the general default rule? According to the general place of supply rule for services, the place of supply is the place in which the supplier is resident. That's the general rule. Services provided to persons in an implementing state. Let's talk about that. Where the recipient of services has a place of residence in an implementing state. We're talking about recipient of services, the customer, and is registered for VAT. The place of supply shall be the place of residence of the recipient. It is opposite to the default rule. What was the default rule? The place of supply of services is the place of supply of the place of residence of the supplier, where the supplier is resident. But if the customer is a registered taxpayer, a taxable person in any of the four implementing states, then the place of supply becomes UAE, where the place of supply becomes the implementing state, because then that recipient is going to record the VAT under reverse charge mechanism. Services to be provided in an implementing state, where the recipient of services has a place of residence in an implementing state and is registered for tax purposes. The place of supply will be the place of residence of the recipient. There's an illustration on that. UAE parent company charges a VAT registered subsidiary located in an implementing state and its subsidiary outside the implementing states a quarterly fee for management services. So UAE parent, both are B2B transactions. Implementing state subsidiary, which is a registrant in that implementing state, and the other subsidiary is outside the implementing state. So the place of supply to the implementing state subsidiary is outside the UAE. The supply of the subsidiary outside the implementing states is within the UAE. Why? Because this subsidiary is already registered in that implementing state, so it is going to book VAT on reverse charge basis. But this subsidiary which is out of the implementing state, maybe in China, Australia, they are not going to book the VAT. So this will become an export of services for the UAE parent company. It will be zero rated. Residence. The place of residence of the supplier or recipient of service is either the state in which the person's place of establishment is located. What do we mean by place of establishment? It is that place where the company is incorporated, usually is located, or where they have a fixed establishment. Fixed establishment would usually mean a branch, right? So either the place of incorporation or a branch, this will be the place of residence of the supplier, provided that they do not have a place of establishment or own a fixed establishment in any other state. Or if the person has a place of establishment in more than one state or has fixed establishments in more than one state, the person's place of residence will be the state in which the person's place of establishment is located, or where they have a fixed establishment that is most closely related to the supply. So which entity does the supply most closely relates, that will be considered as the place of residence of the person. If the person has a place of establishment in more than one state or has fixed place of establishment in more than one state, the person's place of residence shall be the closest linked place of state with the supply, or the state in which the usual place of residence of the person is located if they do not have a place of establishment or a fixed establishment in any state. Another unique scenario where the it is the usual place of residence of the person, and it applies to both supplier and recipient. It can be the place of residence of the supplier or the place of residence of the recipient of services. Place of establishment and fixed establishment has been already defined in Article 1. It is the place where the business is legally established, incorporated, etc. Fixed establishment is any fixed place of business other than the place of establishment, meaning other than the place of incorporation, in which a person conducts business. And it does mention somewhere branch as well, regularly or permanently, and where sufficient human and technology resources exist to make and receive supplies of goods and services. These definitions are there in Article 1. Remember that for the purpose of your studies and examination, you should assume that all the GCC member states are implementing states. Services related to goods installed or assembled. Now that's an easy one. For the supply of services provided on goods, such as the installation of goods supplied by others, the place shall be where the said services are performed. Where the said services are performed, it would ordinarily mean where the installation is happening for the goods. Services related to real estate, that's again a very easy one, where the real estate is situated. For supply of services, for the supply of services related to real estate, the place of supply is where the real estate is located. Real estate includes, as an example, any area of land over which rights or interests of services can be created. Area of land. It also includes any building, structure, or engineering work permanently attached to the land. Any fixed or any fixture or equipment which makes up a permanent part of the land or is permanently attached to the building, structure, or engineering work, that is also part considered as real estate. Note that a supply of services is deemed to relate to real estate where the supply of services is directly connected with the real estate, or where it is the grant of a right to use the real estate. Grant of a right would ordinarily mean renting of the property, for example. A supply of services directly connected with the real estate includes a grant, assignment, or surrender of any interest in or right over the real estate. The grant, assignment, or surrender of a personal right to be granted any interest in or right over the real estate. So, sharing in the rent, for example, grant of a right, right, or assignment, managing the property, etc. Or the grant, assignment, or surrender of a license to occupy land or any other contractual right exercisable over or in relation to the real estate, including the provision, lease, and rental of sleeping accommodation in a hotel or similar establishment. So even rentals are included in the supply of real estate. A supply of services by real estate experts or real estate agents, that will also be considered as a supply of services directly connected with the real estate, or a supply of services involving the preparation, coordination, and performance of construction, destruction, maintenance, conversion, and similar work. So architectural services, for example. So these will be services directly connected with the real estate. Now about means of transportation. Hiring of the means of transportation. For supply of a means of transport to a lessee who is not a taxable person in the UAE and does not have a tax registration number in an implementing state, the place of supply shall be where means of transport were placed at the disposal of the lessee. So, for example, a an individual who is not really, who does not have a tax registration number, etc., he hires a car, right? So from a UAE company itself. So if the car is provided in UAE, the place of supply will be UAE. But if the person is in Saudi Arabia and a company which is a UAE company that provides, they had a car already present in Saudi Arabia and they provide the car on rental basis, the place of supply will be where the means of transport were provided. That means it will become Saudi Arabia. Restaurant, hotel, drink and catering services. For supplies of restaurant and catering services, the place of supply is where such services are actually performed. So that's an easy one. Supply of telecommunication services and electronic services. Now that is uh, an interesting angle. For specified telecommunication and electronic services, e-commerce, etc., the place of supply shall be where the services are used and enjoyed. Why the word enjoyed? For example, the broadcasted dramas, television serials, or gaming, or other electronically available means of entertainment. In the UAE, to the extent the use and enjoyment of the supply in the UAE, outside the UAE, to the extent the use and enjoyment of the place of the supply is outside the UAE. These are the rules for telecommunication services and electronic services. The actual use and enjoyment of all telecommunication and electronic services shall be where these services were used, regardless of the place of the contract or payment. So quite a few people who have an Etisalat number, for example, they might go to Europe or for that matter another implementing states like Saudi Arabia or Oman, and they continue to use the same Etisalat number there, even on roaming basis. So how will that transaction, that supply be treated? The place of supply of that usage, which is outside of UAE, the where it is used and enjoyed, that will become the place of supply. The guide, titled E-commerce, states that it is possible that a single supply may be apportioned for the purposes of a place of supply rules, so that it is treated as partly in the UAE and partly outside the UAE. This is limited to situations where a sufficient distinction exists between the different parts of the services supplied or the consideration charged for the services to make it practical and reasonable to make such a split. So naturally, this relates to electronic services and telecommunication services. So matters of IP will come in, IP address, etc. The place of use and enjoyment, the way that the place of use and enjoyment is determined depends upon the situation in which services are supplied. Guidance is given within the e-commerce guide issued by the Federal Tax Authority relating to various scenarios with specific regard to the place of supply of electronic services. Is supplied to a physical place where an electronic service is delivered to a physical place. The place of use and enjoyment of that service is that physical place. For example, where electronic services content can be only accessed from a particular physical location, that location will be the place of use and enjoyment. So we do see, sometimes on YouTube or some other, platforms over the internet that this is not accessible to customers outside of USA or any other country. But that's a very good example of accessibility. A place to a portable, a supply to a portable device where electronic services are provided, which are accessed on a portable device. The use and enjoyment may be determined on the basis of the recipient's location at the time the services are supplied. For example, where music is electronically delivered to a recipient located in the UAE, the place of use and enjoyment will be UAE. Factors which may be indicative of the recipient's location include the following: the internet protocol IP address of the device used by the recipient to receive the electronic service, the country code stored on the SIM card used by the recipient to receive the electronic services, the place of residence of the recipient, the billing address of the recipient, the bank details used by the recipient for the payment. All of these factors will be considered to determine these factors will indicate the recipient's location while enjoying or consuming that electronic or telecommunication service. Priority is given to whichever factors give the most precise information regarding the actual place where the electronic services will be used and enjoyed. Wherever you see these discussions, you can see the two words repeated because these words define the place of supply, where these services are used and enjoyed. For example, if a UK resident orders an on-demand film to be watched on a computer with an IP address in the UAE, the use and enjoyment of the film will be in the UAE. Why? Because the IP address was in UAE. Relevant telecommunication and electronic services. Article 23 of the regulation defines telecommunication services as the delivering, broadcasting, converting, or receiving any of the services specified below by using any communications equipment or devices that transmit, broadcast, convert, or receive such services by electronic, magnetic, electromagnetic, electrochemical, or electromechanical means or other means of communication. These include the following: wired and wireless communication, voice, music, and other audio material, viewable images, signals used for transmission, with the exception of public broadcast, signals used to operate and control any machinery or equipment, services of an equivalent type which have a similar purpose and function. All of these are examples of means of communication. These are telecommunication services. Now, electronic services, they are defined in Article 23 of the VAT Executive Regulations as services which are automatically delivered over the internet via an electronic network or form of an electronic marketplace, including the supply of domain names, web hosting, remote maintenance of programs and equipment, the supply and upgrading of software, the supply of images, text, information provided electronically, such as photos, screenshots, etc., supply of music, film, supply of online magazines, supply of advertising spaces, supply of political, cultural, artistic, scientific, educational, entertainment broadcasts, live streaming, supply of distance learning. Please remember, supply of distance learning does not mean actual Zoom calls. No, distance learning is usually there. For example, Udemy or Coursera have distance learning courses that are already there on the websites. Any services of an equivalent type which have a similar purpose and function. An electronic marketplace means a distribution service which is operated by electronic means, including by a website, internet portal, gateway, store, or distribution platform, and meets the following conditions. What conditions are there? It allows suppliers to make supplies of electronic services to customers. That's one. The supplies made by the marketplace must be made by electronic means. A guide issued by the FTA on e-commerce clarifies that a service will not be an electronic service where it is not one of the services listed above, even if the service is supplied using internet or an electronic network. For example, supply of a legal or financial advice, transport services, hotel accommodation, Airbnb, etc. Uh, they will not constitute electronic services simply because the parties use the internet to communicate with each other or to facilitate bookings. In addition to the above, for a service to qualify as an electronic service, that service should also be automatically delivered over the internet, an electronic network, or an electronic marketplace with minimal or no human intervention. That's a key point here. If there is, human intervention involved or excessive human intervention involved, that will not be considered an electronic service for the purpose of the UAE VAT decree law. Thus, although a small degree of human intervention is acceptable to enable or complete a supply, this intervention should not change the nature of the delivery of a service as being essentially automated. Example, where a recipient receives a manually generated email with a download link for the software which he has picked from the supplier's website, the software can be still considered automatically delivered. Human intervention of sending an email with a download link is too insignificant to change the nature of the supply. It's a minimal human intervention. The above example can be contrasted with a situation where a recipient commissions customized software which has to be developed by the supplier before being put on the supplier's website to be available to the recipient. In this situation, the human involvement from the supplier in developing the software is critical to the supplier's ability to make the supply of services. And naturally, a lot of human interaction will be there. As a consequence, the services cannot be treated as automatically delivered to the recipient. Note that interactive live streaming does not fulfill the criteria to be deemed an electronic service, as there is an element of human intervention or interaction within the supply, and it is not minimal. It is the entire streaming itself. Uh, Cultural, artistic, sports, educational, and entertainment services. The place of supply of cultural, artistic, sports, educational, or entertainment services shall be where these services are performed. Supply of transportation services or transport related services, a very important topic, a scalable topic. The place of supply of transportation services and the transport related services shall be where the transportation starts. That's the default rule. And this is Article 30 of the VAT decree law. Place of start of the transports. If the transport service includes more than one stop and consists of multiple supplies, the place of supply is where each transport service commences. So these will be considered as multiple transactions, not one supply, multiple supplies. And for each supply, we shall have to see where the transport services starts. The place of supply of transport related services is the same as the transport to which they relate. Uh, Article 30 of the VAT decree law read with Article 22 of the VAT executive regulations. What are transport related services? For example, provision of a meal or lunch on an aircraft, etc. So those things can be considered as transport related services. Thank you very much.